Marvel, from Mecha creator to Ultraman legend. Episode 41. Mr. Roth, you need to know that this world needs someone with great power like you to protect you. Then let the capable people go. But I think you're the one who has the ability. Okay, that's the end of this matter. You know it's impossible for me to join you. Lot shook his head and refused, very firmly. That. Alright, Coulson could also see that he really didn't want to join the Avengers, so there was nothing to say. Then don't send it. Mr. Roth, I hope there will be opportunities for cooperation in the future. After speaking, Coulson stood up helplessly, and then left the office. After leaving the Ott mansion, he called Nick Fury. Coulson, how's the mission? Did he say yes? As soon as the phone was connected, Nick Fury asked several questions in a row. It's a pity, Chief, he refused, and he was very firm. Coulson said a little helplessly. So? Maybe you can start with Spider-Man. Obviously, Nick Fury did not give up. Okay, I see. Coulson hung up the phone helplessly. It seems that he still has to run to where Spider-Man is, preferably at home. However, at the same time as they were talking, Roth was also talking to Gwen. Are you saying that some agents know our identities? So what to do? I don't want Spider-Man's identity to be discovered by my dad. The thought of his identity being discovered by his father made Gwen feel a little numb. I think it doesn't matter if your dad knows your identity. After all, you saved him and his police officers from the Lizard Man thing. Roth shrugged indifferently. But what about the school? What Gwen is really worried about is that her superhero status will have a big impact on her daily life. After all, she is still a student. And when her identity is known, who knows if those who have been taught by her will retaliate. The thought of facing endless troubles in the future made her face sad. Don't worry, Coulson shouldn't dare to reveal your identity to the public. If he really does that, then we'll just get him in trouble. Roth doesn't believe Coulson will make their identities public, which doesn't do S.H.I.E.L.D. any good, and it will offend them for this. So he believed that Nick Fury would never do that. Alright, Gwen felt a little relieved to hear his words. After school in the afternoon, sure enough, Coulson was already waiting for her at her home. And her father George Stacy also happens to be at home, which gives her some headaches. I'm sorry Dad, me and this. There are some things to talk about separately. Gwen made an excuse, grabbed Coulson, and left the house. Only a puzzled look was left for George. Coming to the uninhabited alley, Gwen clasped his hands to his chest and said to Coulson very unceremoniously, "Get me out of here. Don't disturb my life. I won't join your Avengers." Miss Stacy, I think you have some misunderstanding. Coulson tried to explain, but was interrupted by Gwen. I don't want to hear what you explain. If you dare to reveal my identity to the public, I will give you a good look. Gwen warned Coulson with a fiery temper, then turned and left. Seeing this, Coulson shrugged helplessly, and immediately dialed Nick Fury's phone again. Looks like it still failed. This time Nick Fury did not ask, but gave his own guess. You guessed right, Chief, Spider-Man also refused, and threatened me not to let me make the news public. Coulson said helplessly. The identities of these superheroes really can't be exposed at will, otherwise they may become criminals at any time. Forget it, let's do this first. Nick Fury sighed helplessly. It is very stupid to make the identity of the other party public. After all, as a superhero enemy, there will definitely be no less. When the time comes, no one can predict what things will turn out. Therefore, I can only give up inviting these two to join the Avengers for the time being. At least these two are helping with a lot of special events now, aren't they? The other side. When Alice listened to the conversation between the two, Roth couldn't help but smile. So far everything was in his hands. Nick Fury is now busy with the frequent occurrence of monsters, whereas there's still time to provoke them. However, for the sake of points, he can only continue to add trouble to Nick Fury. Although he got 5,000 points for solving the Lizard Men, he still had 5,000 points to buy the original Ultra Armor version 7.0. This time, he will not exchange the original version. After all, the original Ultra Armor can no longer keep up with him with Ultra Factor. At the very least, the original Ultra Armor version 7.0 is required. So the decision is yours, the Cosmic Monster King Airy. After a long selection in the system mission, the kind of monsters and aliens that can be gigantic or have super high technology are absolutely not summoned at present. The gigantic monster is not an opponent at all with his current strength. And aliens with super high IQ and can make high tech cannot be summoned. After all, this kind of monster is not its own strength, but scientific and technological strength. With the current scientific and technological power of the Earth, any alien with a super high IQ may be able to be beaten. So he finally chose the Universe Monster King Airy, which could not be gigantic, and killed it to get 5,000 points. Episode 42. After summoning the Cosmic Monster King Airy, Roth asked Alice to monitor the information on the network at all times, and immediately reported the news of the monster. After waiting for a moment when there was no news of the monster, he turned around and went to other things. The creation of a satellite was very simple for him, and after so many days of preparation, it was also time to launch the satellite. A few days later, OTT Technology officially launched the satellite. And this move, even if it was not publicized, has attracted the attention of many media. The western suburbs of New York are located in a remote location. It has been bought by OTT Technology and has built a rocket silo in just 1 month. Mr. Roth, what exactly is the purpose of your satellite? May I ask if OTT Technology only builds rocket silos to launch satellites? Mr. Roth, may I ask if your construction of rocket silos has been approved by the Ministry of Defense? Because there were too many reporters and visitors who dared to come when they got the news, Roth simply held a press conference. Looking at the reporters below scrambling to ask, he knew that it was impossible not to say two words. First of all, the purpose of Technology's launch of the satellite is to facilitate civilian use, so your concerns are superfluous, and the Ministry of Defense has approved this matter. As long as there is money and the Ministry of Defense does not agree to launch satellites, the country is already in the hands of the capital chaebol. May I ask Mr. Roth, why did you suddenly think of launching a satellite? The question asked by this beautiful reporter is more meaningful. His answer is likely to have a lot to do with the economic development of the entire ugly country in the future, and this is no joke. Hearing this, Roth waved his hand and signaled everyone to calm down. I can only say that launching satellites is beneficial for all of us. That is, 4G networks are about to be eliminated, and 5G networks are coming instead. When the thousands of people present heard the news, they immediately became lively. After all, the 4G network has just been used, and they did not expect that the 5G network would actually come. This is a bit of a catch-off guard for everyone. However, 4G networks can enjoy the convenience of various networks, allowing people to swipe short videos, play games, engage in finance, and so on anytime, anywhere. So what exactly will happen to 5G networks? Everyone was looking forward to it. And this news is undoubtedly a bombshell for journalists. It is conceivable that once this news spreads, it will cause a sensation around the world. Seeing that the revelation was enough, Roth turned around and left the press conference scene. The 5G network is just an incidental function for the satellite chain plan, but it doesn't delay him to make money with it. Mr. Roth, congratulations. At this time, Pepper Pay and a reluctant Tony walked over. I didn't expect Miss Pay and our Iron Man to come here. It's really surprising. Roth was really surprised, but he didn't expect that the two of them would actually come to watch the first launch of a satellite by OTT Technology. If it's not Pay, I don't want to come. Launching satellites or something is too childish. Tony shrugged boredly. If it weren't for Pepper's request that he must come, he would definitely be continuing to study the steel suit now. Tony. Pacho was a little dissatisfied with his unkind words. How to say that Technology is also a shareholder of Stoke Industries. The two companies also have a good cooperative relationship. It's okay, after all, our Iron Man is a superhero, and launching satellites is really too pediatric for him. Lot was not angry, but smiled. Tony sensed the mockery he meant, but Pepper couldn't say anything here. Although the two have been compared by people, the relationship is not very good. Roth also doesn't have a habit of sticking a hot face to a cold ass. Lot, everything is ready. At this time, Susan, who was dressed in an OL suit with long legs of black silk, and Gwen, who was dressed purely, walked over together. Well, then get ready to start. Roth nodded, and then the three of them went to the launch pad together. Seeing that all the staff of the launch pad were waiting for his orders, he did not waste time. Alice, launch directly. Launching satellites is not difficult for him. This time, because it was the first launch, all Susan suggested that he come in person. With his technology, plus every small satellite is loaded with plasma spark energy. It can be said that these small satellites all have the ability to lift off on their own, as well as nearly unlimited energy. Even operating in outer space for hundreds of years is fine. 3, 2, 1. Launch. With the countdown, the rocket slowly lifted off. Then it flew into the sky under everyone's attention and disappeared, and in an instant the crowd erupted into enthusiastic cheers. The aviation industry has carried people's exploration of the unknown starry sky, which is why so many people pay attention. And the launch of satellites by OTT Technology has indeed attracted the attention of many people. Episode 43. At the same time, Nick Fury is a little troubled, because today he received news that in the Roosevelt Reservoir in Washington state, someone found a giant underwater while fishing. Some people wear diving equipment because they are curious and want to look for giants. Unexpectedly, the giant object was actually a giant monster 8 meters tall, and all the diving people were eaten by the monster without exception. Fortunately, this matter was controlled from the beginning, so the news did not spread. Because the Roosevelt Reservoir is too important, heavy weapons must not be used, which is why Nick Fury has a headache. After thinking about it, he could only leave this matter to Tony. You mean another monster has appeared? The news wasn't revealed, right? When Tony received a call from Nick Fury, he was obviously a little excited, because he had recently developed several high-power weapons and was worried that there was no place to test them. Of course, you can rest assured, this news has been controlled at present, and it will not be leaked in a short time. So Tony, are you sure to solve this monster? Of course I'm sure. Where's the monster location? Tony can't wait to solve this monster, and it's not just his obligation as a superhero. And he also has to prove to everyone that he is better than that steel Superman. Location is at the Roosevelt Reservoir, Washington. Before Nick Fury's words were finished, he found that the phone had been hung up, which really made him a little helpless. Do you want to inform him? Compared to the unobtrusive Iron Man, Nick Fury actually trusts Iron Superman more. The other party is stronger than Tony, whether it is scientific and technological strength or fighting spirit. However, this matter is the responsibility of S.H.I.E.L.D., and relying on others to solve this does not seem to be incompetent by S.H.I.E.L.D. Meanwhile, on the odd technology side, Tony planned to leave after the successful launch of the satellite. Now that he has taken on the task of Nick Fury, he wastes no time and asks Harpy to take the box containing the steel suit and start putting it on. Tony, where are you going? Pepper, who was chatting with Susan, noticed that the crowd around him was talking and turned his head to see that Tony had already put on the steel suit. There are some things. Dinner doesn't have to wait for me. Tony said hello and flew into the sky and disappeared into the sky. Really, again? Pei Chao complained helplessly. I thought you'd get used to it. Susan smiled empathetically. After all, every time Lot left in armor, she was also very worried. Forget it, let him go. Pei Chao sighed. The two had just confirmed their relationship. How could she not be worried? Lot, who was chatting with Gwen first not far away, saw this look slightly moved. Alice, follow the trail of Iron Man. The target is flying to the Stark Industrial Building. Are you ready to change your steel suit? The steel suit Tony carries with him is the Mark V portable version, which is more convenient to carry, but it is not too powerful a weapon. And there must be only one reason why Tony is anxious to go back and change the steel suit, that is, the monster King Aerie has appeared. Lot, did you find something? Did Iron Man suddenly leave in a hurry? Did he find a monster? Gwen guessed some too. That's right, it looks like the monster should have been found. Lot clasped his hands to his chest and nodded. So what do we do? Gwen looked eager to try, and it was really boring to teach street punks or catch robbers or something. In contrast, of course, dealing with monsters is more exciting. Don't worry, wait until they can't solve it, we'll make a move. Roth was not in a hurry, and if Tony could solve King Aerie, then he would sit back and enjoy it. If it can't be solved, it's not too late for him to make a move. Alright, Gwen was a little worried that innocent people would be hurt, but since it was Lot's decision, she couldn't object. Alice, the Ultra satellite has been deployed, right? Yes sir, 5 small satellites have entered orbit and are now above New York. Good, then give me an eye on Iron Man at all times and transmit the video signal back. Yes sir. Roth equipped the small satellite that has just been launched with a hyperspectral camera, which can clearly collect all information on the ground and give back in the form of high-definition video broadcast. So they don't need to go to the scene at all to see the live footage. Follow me. Roth smiled at Gwen beside him, then turned and left the hall. Seeing this, Gwen also followed curiously. The two came to an undisturbed lounge. Alice, bring the video in. Yes sir. Alice's avatar appeared in front of the two, and then a virtual screen appeared with a wave of her hand. In the virtual screen is Iron Man flying high in the air. You can really see it. Gwen was a little surprised, but he wasn't surprised when he thought about it. After all, Lot's black technology is still less. Under the gaze of the two, Tony finally stopped after a few minutes. It's Washington. Gwen recognized at a glance where Tony was. If you guessed correctly, the monster should be in the lake below. Lot touched his chin and guessed. That's Roosevelt Reservoir. If the monster hides in the water, it's not good. Gwen frowned. She wasn't good at fighting in water. Episode 44. It's really troublesome. Roth nodded undeniably. Although his Saiwen Armor can fight in water, its strength will inevitably weaken. And King Aerie is different. This guy was originally an aquatic cosmic monster. It can exert 200% combat effectiveness in water. So to solve this guy, it is better to get it ashore. The Roosevelt Reservoir is 240 kilometers long and the water depth can reach a maximum of 800 m, so it is not easy to get King Aerie. Here we go. Seeing that Tony was going to do it, both Roth and Gwen watched carefully. At this time, Tony landed on the surface of the lake, looking at the bottomless lake below. He smiled proudly. It's good that I was prepared beforehand, otherwise it would be really troublesome to deal with the monsters in this water. When the words fell, I saw him raise a hand, and then a dive tracking missile was launched. Jarvis, keep an eye on me. As soon as a monster appears, it will immediately detonate. Yes sir. At this time, in front of Tony's eyes, a shooting of the tracking missile in the water appeared, and a large number of fish could be seen frightened. And as tracking missiles continue to dive, visibility is getting lower and lower. At this moment, the picture in front of him suddenly went black, which startled Tony. Then the picture reappeared. It turned out that the octopus had been wrapped around the tracking missile. Tony couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this. Such a close 3D impact. It really felt like he was there. Just as he regained his mind control and continued to search for the monster with the tracking missile, suddenly 2 orange-yellow rays of light appeared in the darkness. Immediately afterwards, a hideous and terrifying monster appeared in front of Tony. Fake. Tony was so frightened that a stirring spirit directly burst into foul language. In this dim environment, a hideous and terrifying giant monster suddenly appeared in front of him, which was really a very test of people's ability to accept. Damn monster, give me death. Tony was embarrassed and directly detonated the tracking missile. Thundered. A violent explosion occurred hundreds of meters underwater, emitting a muffled thunder. Suddenly, the water on the surface of the lake surged and a large number of dead fish all turned out with a splash. Immediately after that, a huge black shadow slowly appeared below the surface of the lake. Roar. A monster with a beige body and black markings, but crescent-shaped horns on the part of the head that should have had eyes, suddenly burst out of the water and roared up to the sky. This is King Aerie, an aquatic cosmic monster from Pitter. What a big monster. Gwen couldn't help but exclaim. This kind of monster, she really couldn't think of what to solve it. Moreover, the other party is still in the water, and the spider silk has no way to use it at all. Thinking of this, she was a little resentful, and she couldn't do anything to deal with these giant monsters. Lot's eyes narrowed when he saw the familiar monster, and he wanted to see how Tony dealt with the monster. The tracking missile just now obviously did not cause any damage to King Airy, but completely angered it. Finally out, give you a taste of this. The appearance of this monster also surprised Tony, but soon he raised his hands, the palm cannon energy output to the maximum, and then shot out. Rumble. The powerful energy accurately slammed into King Airy's body, and blasted King Airy, who had nowhere to borrow power, into the water. However, the next moment King Airy resurfaced, and such an attack did not pose any threat to it at all. It's useless. Tony's pupils twitched, but he had expected it. Although the palm cannon is powerful and convenient, it lacks aggression against this powerful monster. For this, he has long been ready. I saw 2 launch ports suddenly rise from his shoulders, followed by 2 high-energy armor-breaking bullets launched. The high-energy armor-breaking bullet spun and nailed to the monster's body, and then exploded in an instant. Thundered. In an instant, a large amount of fire smoke covered the lake, and only a roar was heard and no sound was heard. Was it successful? Tony had a smug smile on his face, knowing that these 2 high-energy armor-breaking bullets were specially developed by him in order to deal with these thick-skinned monsters. After all, the last time he ate the loss of not being able to break the defense of the monster. Was it successful? On the Shield Sky battleship, Nick Fury is also always paying attention to the situation here. The smoke gradually dispersed and the water surface returned to calm. This couldn't help but make Tony frown. This is not like a situation where the monster has been solved. He had a hunch that the monster was definitely not dead. At this moment, a shadow appeared on the surface of the lake under Tony's feet, and then the shadow grew bigger and bigger. When he found out, King Airy instantly broke out of the water, and then several meters long tail instantly bound him. Tony was shocked and tried to break free, but King Airy's tail was the main means of attack, and how could it be so easily bound? Bang! The moment he tied Tony, King Airy pulled him into the water with him. Oops, Iron Man was sneak attacked. Seeing this, Gwen couldn't help but exclaim, "Looks like we've got our hands on it." Roth frowned. This monster is also too smart. It can actually sneak attack from the bottom of the water, and it will drag people into the water to take advantage of the battle. It is almost impossible for Tony to break free from King Airy's shackles, and how long will his steel suit last in the water? Episode 45. That is, when Roth and Gwen planned to rush to the scene, they did not expect the mutation to occur. I saw that the calm lake that had been surging again after King Airy dragged Tony underwater, and a large number of fish and shrimp that had been electrocuted floated up. You don't need to look to know that this is definitely formed by the release of high-voltage electricity by King Airy. However, immediately after that, the entire surface of the lake seemed to boil, churning wildly, as if there was a powerful energy stirring the entire reservoir. A white light lit up on the surface of the lake, and in an instant, a figure rushed out of the water. I actually escaped. Rao and Roth were a little surprised, but they didn't expect Tony to escape from the shackles of King Airy. Wait, high voltage? He suddenly remembered something. If Tony's steel suit owner remembered correctly, the ability of the owner of the steel suit to absorb electricity and convert it into his own energy. The thunder and lightning of the original Thor god can be absorbed by him, releasing a more powerful chest cannon. If he guessed correctly, Tony was in the lake just now by absorbing King Airy's electricity, thereby releasing a powerful shaped cannon, so he could escape. As he guessed. At this time, Tony gasped and felt a burst of happiness in his heart. If his steel suit hadn't been able to absorb the voltage released by that monster just now, I'm afraid he would have been electrocuted a long time ago. And it's also impossible to fire a powerful shaped cannon to repel the monster. Now just thinking about it makes him a little afraid. Tony, are you alright? At this time, the military had already sent several helicopters to support, and it was Rode who spoke. It's okay, but it's useless if you come. This monster can't be solved by ordinary weapons. Tony opened his mask and gasped, not forgetting to despise Rod's armor. After this Mark II was handed over to the military, there was no improvement in performance at all, and it was just a few more junk weapons. Tony said that he couldn't look at it at all. His big killer chest can't do it. What about that guy? What about relying on those garbage weapons of the military? I still want to try. Rode couldn't argue with this, but he planned to try. Tony shrugged his shoulders and gestured for him to move. Rode looked at the calm lake, and after a moment he said with some embarrassment, "Tony, what method did you use to lure that monster out of the water just now?" Tony looked disgusted. Dive tracking missiles, but now there are none. This way. Rode was even more embarrassed, because his armor was not equipped with weapons for underwater combat at all. After thinking about it, he had to launch several miniature missiles at the lake. Thundered. A series of explosions sounded, and several splashes were smashed on the surface of the lake. And then it's gone. Not to mention monsters, even a few fish were not fried. That's embarrassing. Wow, are you here to fry fish? Tony tilted his head and looked at Rode with an exaggerated expression. Rode was embarrassed. I thought I could lure it out. Forget it, if that monster doesn't take the initiative to come out, there is no way for it to do it. Tony shook his head and felt powerless. His weapon could not do any harm to the monster, and the monster had been hiding in the water. At this moment, Rode suddenly shouted, "Be careful." Immediately afterwards, a crescent-shaped yellow electric light bullet suddenly shot out from the surface of the lake and hit the two. At a critical moment, the two were able to dodge the attack of this electric light bomb. However, before they could wipe the cold sweat on their foreheads, the next moment, more electrical light ejected. The two who hit were caught off guard. Bang! After holding out for a moment, Road was the first to be hit by an electric light bullet. You know, Mark II is much weaker than Tony's current steel suit. This blow directly knocked Road down and fell into the water. Tony was a little anxious when he saw this, because Mark II did not have a chest cannon, in case it was rolled up by the monster's tail. At a critical moment, he desperately pulled the fallen Road back. However, King Ares' attack had no intention of stopping. The moment Tony caught Road, a large number of electric light projectiles shot towards the two. Bang! In an instant, both were shot down and smashed towards the lake. Prepare for rescue. Nick Fury's face changed drastically, but he didn't expect that Tony and Road were not opponents of this monster together, and it would be finished if they let the two fall into the water. And just when everyone was panicking, there was a sudden sonic boom in the sky. Immediately afterwards, Lot's figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and at the same time, a crescent-shaped Spichum energy chopping wave slashed towards the lake. King Ares also seemed to have discovered the danger, and suddenly countless electric lights catapulted. However, in front of this slashing wave, it was like a bubble, and it was directly destroyed. Thundered, the Spichum energy chopper wave submerged into the water, setting off a huge energy explosion in an instant, and the entire reservoir trembled. This made the head of Roosevelt's reservoir jump. If the Grand Coulee Dam collapsed, the damage would be great, and the towns below the dam would also suffer. Estimated losses can reach trillions of dollars, and he will be court-martialed. But now, the person in charge of this situation can only pray that this blow can kill the monsters in the reservoir. It's him. Tony and Road, who escaped from the water in embarrassment, subconsciously sighed with relief after seeing the figure in the sky. Even they didn't realize that they had a lot of trust in this steel Superman. Think that since he appeared, then he would definitely be able to kill the monster. After all, the energy slashing wave just now really shocked the two of them. Episode 46. Rao is proud of Tony, and he has to admit that he is too far behind the other party in weapon development. The kind of energy attack that can release chopping waves, he has not figured out the principle so far. Not only them, but even Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. If Steel Superman hadn't appeared just now, not only would the monster not be solved, but both Tony and Red would have been in danger. At that point, he will be able to blame. Fortunately, things have reversed. The blow just now should have injured the underwater monster. After a while, the lake finally returned to calm. I saw that the surface of the lake actually slowly turned dark red and slowly spread. Did the monster get killed? Rhodes' eyes widened. Tony shook his head. He couldn't tell if the monster had been taken down. Roth also frowned, because the system did not prompt that the task was completed, which means that King Ares was not dead. The knife just now only injured it because it was separated by a lake several meters deep. One knife does not fall in seconds, and this time it is a bit troublesome. If he could, he wouldn't want to go into the water to fight King Ares. But if King Ares had been hiding in the water, no one could take it. Roth's Saiwen Armor is also not loaded with weapons such as underwater tracking missiles. Oops, that monster doesn't come out. What should I do now? Road also saw that the monster was not dead, and it was difficult for the other party to hide underwater. Hey, Steel Superman, aren't you loaded with weapons like underwater tracking missiles on your armor? Hearing this, Lot glanced at him and did not answer. Isn't this nonsense? If he had that kind of weapon, he would have used it a long time ago. Where would he give King Ares a chance to breathe? I see, let's think about it in the long run. I can go back and make more tracking missiles, Tony suggested after thinking about it. Now he can only think of this way. However, Roth shook his head, and after using the monster tracker he exchanged last time to accurately locate King Ares' location, he slammed underwater. Hey! Road was a little shocked, but he didn't expect that he would actually choose to enter the water to fight the monster. Tony frowned. His Mark VI good new energy armor did not have the function of diving, so he was very discouraged from entering underwater combat. But the other party did so without hesitation. That is to say, the opponent's armor has the ability to fight underwater. Thinking of this, Tony was a little unwilling. Unexpectedly, he lagged behind not only a lot in weapons, but even armor performance. This was really a big blow to his proud heart. Meanwhile, Lot, who dived underwater, did not hesitate and swam directly towards the place where King Ares was hiding. Underwater is King Ares' home field, and it has already found Lot's traces from far away. Roar! King Ares roared, and then released high-voltage electricity to try to block Lot. However, this move is just charging Lot. The steel suit can absorb electricity, and his Saiwen armor can also do it. After all, his Saiwen armor is not only given by the system, but also condenses his own wisdom. Give me death. Lot approached quickly, then drew another Spichum sword, followed by a second sword without hesitation. Rumble! In an instant, a powerful energy burst, and King Ares only had time to roar, and was split in half by the Spichum energy slashing wave. Immediately afterwards, the energy of the chopping wave slashed towards the surface of the lake unabated, wiping Tony and Road, and the two flew into the sky and disappeared. The two were startled by this moment, and after understanding what it was, they suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. They couldn't recognize where the blow just now was, and if they were hit, they had no doubt that they would be split in half. Did you solve that monster? Road, who wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, looked at the lake in horror. I don't know, but it's not that simple to kill that monster in the water. Tony shook his head. He didn't think the monster would die so easily. I just don't know how many times can the energy chopper wave of steel Superman? However, at the same time as his words fell, I saw Lot fly out of the water instantly, and then flew into the distance without stopping. Hey! And he's gone? Rhodes was stunned and a little confused about the situation, so I don't know if the monster is dead or not. Tony's face stinked. After all, he was slapped in the face as soon as he finished speaking, and no one had a good face. Without answering Rhodes' words, he flew away without saying a word. Hey, Tony? Rhodes was a little confused, so he thought that he had said the wrong thing. So who can tell him now if the monster has been solved? On the sky battleship, Nick Fury saw that the boulder hanging in his heart after Roth left was finally put down. Although the process was a bit tortuous, the crisis at Roosevelt's reservoir was finally resolved. Chief, wouldn't it be that you asked me to join the so-called Avengers to deal with this monster? I'm afraid I won't be able to do it. In the office, the young man who had not spoken all this time shook his head helplessly. Nick Fury chuckled when he heard this. Captain Steve, don't have any psychological pressure. Such monsters are still rare, and the Avengers can't do without you. However, I don't think I can do it, so why not let the man in the tin be the captain? He's awesome and decisive. That's different. Nick Fury shook his head and said, that person is not a member of the Avengers, so you understand. Okay then. Seeing that he could not shirk it, Steve could only reluctantly accept this task. Episode 47. Lot, you're amazing. As soon as Roth returned, Gwen threw herself at him excitedly. She didn't go to the scene just now because she knew she couldn't help. After seeing Lot show his might through the live broadcast, and killed the terrifying monster in just 3 or 2 strokes, her whole person was excited. The strength of that monster is actually average, but because it is in the water, it is more tricky. Lot patted her upturned spot without care, signaling her to hurry down. He was not too proud of solving King Aerie. After all, he was just a weakened King Aerie. If the complete cosmic monster King Aerie appeared, he would definitely be the first to escape. And feeling the big hand behind him, Gwen couldn't help but give him a blank look. Speaking of which, you use the Spikem sword every time you fight. That's too wasteful of money. Ever since the last time she knew that it would cost $5 million to repair a Spikem sword, she couldn't help but mutter, where is this high-tech battle? This is obviously smashing people with money. The 2 Spikem swords could only unleash 2 such attacks, and this time there were no 10 million American swords, and he was not distressed. Gwen felt a little sorry for him. After all, $10 million is not small money. Next time equip your spider suit, too. Lot thought that she was envious of her possession of the Spikem sword, so he simply equipped her with one. It's not that difficult anyway. Gwen had planned to explain that although she was envious, she didn't mean to ask for it. But seeing that Roth said this, she immediately shut up. She actually wanted the Spikem sword for a long time, but she was just embarrassed to speak. If she has the Spikem sword, then she can also help when a monster appears, right? Seeing her happy look, Roth couldn't help but shake his head funny. Money is really not a matter for him, although technology is not as profitable as selling arms. But it can also be another miracle, such as he has already let Alice start making all kinds of popular games in past lives, such as DNF and LOL. The level of money absorption of these games is not weak. Today, OTT technology has industries in both electronics and healthcare. With artificial intelligence Alice entering the game industry is also a breeze. Thinking of this, he shook his head. These things could be left to Susan, and now he had more important things to do. The production of small satellites can already be mass-produced with Alice's help, so he doesn't have to worry about it. At least by the time of the arrival of Avengers, or Chidari's army, he was able to build hundreds of small satellites. These small satellites are equipped with laser weapons and can accurately achieve high-altitude strikes. Even in the face of Chidari's army, he did not panic at all. Now all he needs to do is build the original Ultraman armor. At that time, his strength is enough to challenge more powerful monsters and earn more points. His goal is to spend 100,000 points to exchange for Saiwen Ultraman Factor and upgrade his current Ultra Factor. After all, his current Ultra Factor is just the Ultra Factor of ordinary Ultraman. The power contained in it is limited, so you have to upgrade and upgrade. As for why choose Saiwen Ultraman instead of redeeming Aurora Zero, Super Tyro, or even Mystic 4 Olympians? That, of course, is that the latter requires too many points. Far from what he can redeem now. Saiwen may not be the strongest among the Ultra brothers, but he is definitely at the top. One of the biggest reasons is that Roth's favorite is Saiwen Ultraman, and that's enough. Of course, Ultra Factor alone cannot transform into a real Ultraman after all. If you want to transform into Ultraman, you need to exchange the corresponding shapeshifter. The redemption of the transformer also costs a lot of mission points. Even Saiwen Ultraman's shapeshifter requires 500,000 mission points, which is far from what can be redeemed now. For the next half month, Roth's original Ultra armor without leaving home. Of course, he didn't forget to summon monsters or aliens to swipe points. Since equipping Gwen's spider suit with the Spikem sword, her strength is more than enough to deal with some aliens. So Roth just has to sit back and enjoy his achievements. Therefore, he has also earned 6,000 points in the past half month. However, such frequent summoning of monsters has also caused a lot of turmoil in the entire world, and everyone believes that these monsters are a precursor to an alien invasion of Earth. These monsters were sent to destroy humanity, and for such remarks, Roth turned a deaf ear. Anyway, no one knew that the monster was summoned by him. As for the poor people who were killed by the monster or were homeless, completely unnecessary. He is not a virgin. From the beginning, he was a man who would stop at nothing to become stronger. That's why he doesn't become a superhero. In this half-month of research, Roth also successfully created the original Ultra Armor. Of course, his original Ultraman armor is not what the original Ultraman looks like. On the contrary, it is still the appearance of Saiwen Armor. No way, he still thinks that Saiwen Armor is more handsome. As for the original Ultra Armor, the Spikem Ray, the 8-point light wheel and the flight system are also equipped. Episode 48. Of course, the most important thing is that the original Ultra Armor has the ability to lift the limiter. When the limiter is released, both the timer and the optical mirror in the helmet's eye emit a red light that symbolizes that the full force is turned on and becomes dangerous. And the speed and power of the armor will be multiplied, and the power of Spikem light will be greatly enhanced. After lifting the limiter, he can completely kill himself without lifting the limiter. This is the power of the original Ultra Armor. As for the Spikem light blade, this weapon is not necessary. He was still accustomed to fighting with the Spikem sword. And this time, the Spikem sword has also been strengthened, and it is no longer damaged by using only one slash wave. However, considering that the energy consumption of the chopping wave is relatively high, the number of times it can be used is not too exaggerated. In general, the new Ultra Armor is a fusion of the original armor and the Saiwen Armor. Ultra Armor, which combines the best of both worlds, is more powerful than a single Ultra Armor. And after the strength has been greatly improved, Roth naturally plans to summon a monster to come out and play. Ace Killer decided it was you. As a space mercenary, the Ace Killer in the mobile Ultraman is very strong, and ordinary people can hardly see the fast movement of the other party. Its weapons are axes and laser guns, and it also carries 4 younger brothers. That is to say, there are a total of 5 aliens summoned this time, and the difficulty can be described as much stronger than before. Of course, the mission rewards are also very generous, with a full 10,000 points. If it was before, Roth would not dare to challenge the Ace Killer now, but now he does not put the Ace Killer in his eyes at all, even if there are a few more trash fish brothers. Without any hesitation, he decisively summoned the Ace Killer and his miscellaneous fish brothers. Alice, always monitor the network, and report the news of the monster immediately. Understood. After arranging all this, suddenly a phone rang. Law picked up the phone and saw that it was Gwen calling. Gwen, what's wrong? Well, there is a concert at the school this afternoon, would you like to come and see it? Concert? Do you really want me to go? Roth wasn't very interested in concerts. Of course, because there are dance partners to dance at concerts, you know, I don't want to dance with other people. Okay, I'll come. Seeing that Gwen said this, Roth was naturally not easy to refuse, and he didn't want Gwen to dance with anyone other than himself. In fact, he is a very satisfying person in terms of feelings. With Susan, he put more of his experience into research, but if there are very good girls around, then he naturally doesn't mind accepting them all. It's good to say that he is simply possessive or anything, anyway, he is such a person. Once decided, no one can change it. Moreover, rich people who don't have a mistress or something, Tony changes women like changing clothes. What happened to his 2 girlfriends? On the other side, Gwen, who was still a little apprehensive in his heart, immediately smiled when he saw him agree. Then I'll wait for you at school. Roth said yes and hung up the phone, seeing that the time was not early, and he did not delay. After changing into a black suit, he then went to the roof of the building to board a private jet. Due to the poor traffic conditions in New York, traffic jams are often present. So his means of transportation is this private jet, with Alice's intelligent control, which is simply time-saving and labor-saving. The other side, the smile on Gwen's face after hanging up the phone immediately attracted the attention of Mary Jane, Betty Brant and Glory Grant. The 3 were Gwen's companions in the band, and together they formed the band Marie Jeans. Gwen, why are you smiling so happily? Is your genius rich boyfriend coming? Mary Jane laughed teasingly. Gwen, you're really not interesting enough. If it weren't for that Roth bringing you to school last time, we wouldn't have known about it. Betty Brant clasped her hands to her chest with a look of resentment. That's it, Gwen, you are the school flower of our school. So many boys pursued you without agreeing, but I didn't expect to find Lot, a business legend, as a boyfriend, and didn't tell us. Glory Grant also complained. Where there is. Besides, it's not a boyfriend yet. Gwen shrugged helplessly. Huh? The third girl was a little shocked when she heard her words. Isn't it? Recently, you are a king about technology running every day. How can you not be a boyfriend? Mary Jane was a little unconvinced. I would like to, but you know geniuses are always different. Gwen sighed helplessly. Seeing this, the 3 women of Mary Jane looked at each other, and it was obvious that they still didn't understand. A girl as beautiful as Gwen, who has not yet had a boyfriend, sends it to the door, and there is actually a man who can resist it. Unless the other party is not a man. Or is it a really good man? In short, facing this legendary genius of the commercial street, Lot, the 3rd daughter was completely curious. Let's hurry up and rehearse, we'll be on stage later. Gwen thought for a moment and suggested. Just when Mary Jane's 3rd daughter was about to agree, she suddenly found a noisy cheer outside. Episode 49. Mary Jane hurriedly opened the window and looked up. I saw a helicopter full of science and technology landing on the playground in the sky. This scene attracted a large number of students to stop and watch, and everyone was speculating about which rich man had descended on the school. Of course, smart people have discovered the logo of OTT technology and understand that the other party must be OTT technology people. Without making people wait long, the hatch opened. Immediately after that, a handsome boy in a black suit holding flowers and sunglasses walked down from the helicopter. It's genius scientist Lot. Soon Lot's identity was recognized. At this moment, countless girls couldn't help but scream, and the Roth in front of them was simply like Prince Charming in their eyes. After all, who doesn't want to marry into a wealthy family? At the same time, some people are speculating about the purpose of Lot's visit. Don't be stunned, Gwen, go out soon. Mary Jane patted the stunned Gwen, then pulled her and ran outside. Betty Brant and Glory Grant looked at each other. Both of them could see the shock in each other's eyes, and then they followed. On the playground, Roth held flowers in his hand and looked at the crowd of people in front of him. He couldn't help but have a headache. He already knew that he would not be so high profile. It's a problem to want to leave. Fortunately, he didn't wait long, and saw that the crowd was vigorously separated. Then Mary Jane pulled Gwen in. Gwen, hurry up. Seeing that Gwen was still indifferent when she arrived here, Mary Jane was anxious for her. Gwen became a little shy when she saw so many people in the playground. Seeing this, Roth was not pretentious, and it was also appropriate to take the initiative as a boy. Here you go. He came to Gwen and handed over the flowers in his hand. Thank you. Gwen's excited little face was red. She really didn't expect that Roth would actually make such a big move for her, but she thought that Roth was a lord before. Didn't you say you invited me to the show? It won't be here, will you? Roth glanced around, obviously not wanting to stay here. Follow us. When Mary Jane heard this, she immediately took the lead in front and left the crowd with the two. Backstage, Mary Jane and Betty Brant and Glory Grant all looked at him curiously. Rao is a little embarrassed to look at Roth, and the Western girl is really too unrestrained. Introduce yourself. My name is Mary Jane, and I'm Betty Brant. Glory Grant. Hello, just call me Lot. Roth smiled and shook hands with several women. He remembers that these girls seem to have a relationship history with Peter Parker in various parallel worlds of Spider-Man, but now at this time, the parallel world of the female spider, so the four are very good friends. Mr. Roth, when did you meet us, Gwen? Mary Jane asked suddenly after taking a look at Lot's handsome appearance. This one. Lot just wanted to answer, but was interrupted by Gwen on the side. He saved me, you should know. Oh. It must have been the last time there were monsters at school. Mary Jane and the three suddenly realized that after the last time the monster appeared at school, Gwen had indeed taken a long time off, and they had visited the hospital at that time. It turned out to be a hero who saved the beauty. No wonder he was able to win our Gwen's heart so quickly. Mary Jane couldn't help but tease. Gwen Xiao's face was slightly red, and he glanced at her a little embarrassed. But she's right, Gwen did fall in love with Roth after being rescued that time. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid he would have died in the mouth of the monster. Thinking of this, Gwen glanced at Lot with affection. You should have a show, don't you rehearse it? Feeling a little awkward, Roth tried to change the subject. Don't worry, it's totally fine with our strength. Betty Brant shook her head unconcernedly, seemingly confident in their band. Let's talk about Mr. Roth, how you became a business legend. Glory Grant is clearly more sexually interested in this. It's similar to what the media reported. I think you should all know it. Roth shrugged. If this kind of thing were explained in detail, I am afraid it would have to be told for 2 days and 2 nights. Fortunately, he didn't bother to tell. Although Glory Grant was a little sorry when she saw this, she didn't ask more. By the way, how many girlfriends have you had, Lot? Mary Jane asked as she looked at him curiously with wide eyes. 1. Roth replied without hesitation. It was only Susan who confirmed the relationship at present, so the exact number was indeed correct. Wow. Mary Jane was a little surprised, but she didn't expect that Roth, who was a top rich man, had only had 1 girlfriend. And this girlfriend if nothing else. Thinking of this, she looked at Gwen, and it was clear that she took the only girlfriend as Gwen. However, she forgot that from the beginning, Gwen had said that the two were not boyfriend and girlfriend. Marie Janes, it's almost time for you to play. At this moment, the door was opened, and a girl came in to inform. It's our show that's about to begin. Mary Jane stood up and looked at Gwen's daughter. Episode 50. Several people nodded to each other and cheered, and then they got ready. Lot, you go to the auditorium and find a seat first. We will start the performance soon. Gwen pushed Lot out of the room, then showed him the way. Understood. Luo T nodded, then looked at her white performance dress and smiled. You are beautiful today. Thank you. Hearing his compliment, Gwen couldn't help but smile, and then she stood on tiptoe and kissed Lot's face. Remember to applaud us later. Of course. Lot smiled and nodded. Gwen blinked playfully, then turned back into the room. Seeing this, Roth also went to the auditorium. Coming to the auditorium, where many students had already gathered, he took off his black suit directly in order not to be noticed. No one paid attention to him. After waiting for a moment, the crowd burst into cheers. I saw that it was the band Mary Jane's represented by Gwen and Mary Jane on the stage. It seems that their popularity at school is not bad. Seeing this, the corners of Roth's mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. Of course, after all, there are school flowers like Gwen and Mary Jane. At this time, someone next to him suddenly spoke. Roth turned his head and saw a brown-haired girl sitting in the corner beside him. The girl's hair looked a little disheveled, which also covered her appearance. I saw her slender fingers constantly operating on the notebook on her leg, extremely fast. Oh. I'm sorry. At this time, the girl also seemed to find that she had actually spoken, so she looked up and showed him an apologetic smile. Roth was stunned. What did the girl in front of him say? Although she looks slovenly, Rao can't hide her pretty face. If you dress up well, it is definitely not inferior to Gwen's school flower-level beautiful girl. The most important thing is to give him a sense of déjà vu. Where have he met her? It's okay, I don't know what you call it. Lot took off his sunglasses and asked with a smile. The brown-haired girl was stunned and stopped the movement of her fingers, then raised her head to look at him. My name is Sky. Hearing this name, Roth was a little surprised. Sky? Could it be the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, the Shockwave woman who has the same level 10 agent privileges as Nick Fury and Black Widow Sky? He carefully looked at the girl in front of him, and finally confirmed that she was indeed the Shockwave girl Sky. He would never be mistaken. Hello, my name is Roth. Roth smiled and held out his hand. Seeing this, Sky hesitated for a moment, but still held his hand. Suddenly she seemed to remember something, and suddenly looked at him with wide eyes. Which genius scientist are you, Lot? Lot was really a little amused when he saw her wide-eyed. There's no need to be so surprised. Yes, there really is nothing to be surprised about. Sky felt that what he said made sense. Whether Lot was some genius scientist and had nothing to do with her, why should she be surprised? Lot was a little confused by her reflex arc. What was going on in this chick's head? However, he did not expect Sky to be a student in this school. The original book has information about Sky's identity and experience, which he is not very clear. It is only known that she is the illegitimate daughter of the supercriminal Mr. Hyde, and her mother is an inhuman. Therefore, she has the power to shake, and the title of Shockwave Woman also came from this. The original Sky was recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. to become an agent, and finally became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., whether it is ability or wisdom is comparable to ordinary people. Thinking of this, Rotter suddenly had the idea of this Shockwave Woman. Still that sentence, instead of cheapening S.H.I.E.L.D., it is better to cheapen yourself. Sky is a very capable woman, and her strength is also very good, and his Ultra team is also very much needed. While watching Gwen and their orchestra perform on stage, Roth thought about how to pull Sky into the Ultra team. I remember that after Sky dropped out of school, he would start investigating his father's whereabouts. He stole a glance at Sky's computer screen, and sure enough, it was some data collection. His guess is correct, so should he be able to start in this aspect? What do you see? Sky glanced at him, clearly spotting his small movements. That's a bit embarrassing. Ahem, Sky-san, if you have any difficulties, I can help. Roth said with a sincere face. Huh? Hearing this, Sky glanced at him, this time with doubt and wariness. Sorry, I don't need help, Sky said and packed up her things, got up and left. Seeing this, Roth was suddenly a little dumbfounded, and his conversation failed? Or was his own words too blunt to alert Sky? Unexpectedly, the first conversation ended in such a result, which really surprised him. Forget it, there will be a chance after anyway. Roth can't chase it out now, that's the stupidest thing to do. Besides, Gwen is still performing on stage. If you leave at this time, I am afraid that both ends will not please. Seriously watching the passionate performance of the four Gwen on the stage, don't say it, it feels very good. After a while, the performance of the four people ended. The audience immediately burst into enthusiastic cheers. How? Our show is not bad. After the performance, all four came to the stage, and Gwen couldn't wait to know his evaluation.